Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with mentor and entrepreneurial founder of Lifespring and ARC International, Robert White. He is essentially an average person in many ways. He knows from direct experience and study what people confront within themselves when they go after big goals. He knows how they get stopped and how they win. His experiences include helping people break through self and other imposed barriers to success. With over 1.3 million graduates from high-impact experimental trainings and companies he's founded and led, Robert's been there and done that. He's lived and worked abroad in Japan, Hong Kong, Mainland China for a total of 21 years. He's got a great story. Enjoy this interview.
You know, I love how you describe what you do, by the way, just an aside from whatever we talk about. I love how you describe it. It just sounds like fun.
Yeah, man, that's the key here, you know, connecting with other people and celebrating what we're doing, especially in this politically divisive cancel culture of ours. It's nice to embrace each other and say, you know what? It's going to be all right.
I love it. Wow. Let's rock and roll.
Absolutely. I love it. So before we get into your life, very interesting life. I am curious, the last 3 years we've been the snow globe's been shaken up because of COVID. And I'm wondering, now that we enter this post-pandemic period of our existence, how you survived that COVID time period and how it's changed the way that you live your life and conduct business now.
The biggest part for me, Joe, has been the need, not always satisfied, but the need to go back to my purpose and, you know, why I'm here. That God put me here with some unique gifts, and am I using them? And those kinds of questions, which are not easy to actually get serious about and answer. I've done it a couple of times previously in my life when some surprises came along and I got knocked off my game a little bit. My work has been face-to-face. It is dependent on group process to some degree, and all of those things were taken away from me, in effect, overnight. So I had to relook at, why do I do what I do? And I'm going to make a way to get it done despite the chaos and restrictions of COVID virus.
So let's get to the brass tacks here and kind of simplify to a certain degree what you do. And I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. And one of the kids is going to look up at you and say, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
Well, I'm not sure if I would do it with the third grade, but my most common answer in the last few years is that I'm an interruption, that all of us have attitudes and habits and behaviors that build up over time. Many of them serve us, really work for us, and some of them don't. You know, we catch ourselves saying, why do I do what I do? You know, why did I make that mistake again and again and again? Why do I trust that person, that kind of person? And then they really disappoint me. Well, those are acting. That's acting and responding, and I should say reacting from old habits, patterns, and beliefs. And I'm the guy that holds the mirror up to people and says, let's take a look at this. Let's look at what really works for you in that regard, and also what gets you consistently in trouble. Let's take a look at where it came from. Let's take the negative energy off of it. Let's have it not run your life, but rather have your choices, your purpose, your vision, your values be the operating system for your life. So that's what I do. I do a lot of it through experiential education. And for the third grader, I would say, if you want to ride a bike, how would you learn? Would you watch a video or read a book? And the third grader would say, well, of course not. And I'd say, well, what do you do? He'd say, I'd get on the bike. And you know, I'd ask them, how does that feel when you first get on that bike? And they're going to say, well, I was afraid and I thought I might fall, but then I got some coaching, maybe my dad or my mom or a friend, and I was a little shaky at first, but I learned something new that will be with me for the rest of my life.
So when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, that's the perfect time to ask me, because I just did not want to be poor. I was consistently embarrassed by the clothes I wore to school, by what I couldn't do because that other kids were doing, that I couldn't invite kids to my house for a birthday party. So I just didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to live in what I now would describe as a very dysfunctional alcoholic household. So a lot of it was what I didn't want. By the time I was in fifth grade, I won a little contest for writing an essay, and a part of it was to go to a radio station and read a part of my essay on the air. And I fell in love with radio, Joe, and that changed my entire life.
And you have a wonderful radio voice. So I'm curious, are you happy with how everything turned out? Based on the dreams and the reality, are you happy with where you're at right now?
I don't sort by happy. I do sort by, am I expressing the joy that's possible in living and the gift that life is. I've had plenty of potholes in my road, my journey, but I want to keep reminding myself and the people around me that happiness is ephemeral. It comes, it goes. It's pretty hard to predict, but that if you it's like cultivating a field, and in my field, the foundation is joy, and then sadness and happiness and fears and all of those things grow in that field, and I can choose which one to water and fertilize and help grow. This last year of my life, March 18th is the first anniversary of one of my son's deaths, and I'm still working through sadness and anger and crazy stuff that kind of ambushing me from time to time. But overall, life is a gift, and I want to receive it. I want to celebrate it.
So, in your life, who's been a role model or a hero for you?
Wow, that's a great question. I have so many. I think I have two adopted children, and the woman that founded and ran the adoption exchange here in the West, Dixie Davis, would be someone, one of many. She retired recently and unfortunately died recently. But, these people that take on something that's such a big issue in society and do it with love and do it with grace and do it with joy and do it with effectiveness as a leader. So I have a long list of people like that are heroes to me.
So if you can meet one person alive on the planet right now and spend a little time with them, who would it be?
Oh, wow, good one. The Dalai Lama comes to mind, certainly. A friend of mine worked for him for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And so we've had deep conversations about that experience. I think, I'm trying to think of the name of the guy that founded Federal Express. Fred, is it Smith? I think, on the Business Channel, what he did in creating that business from zero and building it to this behemoth, and doing so again with good values and good leadership. I've always been curious about him as a person. I'd really love to meet him.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version of you, the younger version, a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained, the roads you've been down in life. What advice would you give your younger self?
Pay more attention to deep relationships with a few people as opposed to, I'm not going to say surface relationships, but casual relationships with many. There are 1,300,000 graduates from seminars in companies that I founded and led. My regret is I don't know most of them. And I'd like to I think I would have focused more on a fewer and deeper relationships.
So every day we have motivating forces that get us through the days, that help us accomplish things, do what we want to do. when you get up and go through your day, what is it that really motivates you and helps you become who you are?
Reminders that I do have gifts, that while I might be self-critical, doubting, I have my share of doubts and fears, to reconnect with this incredible gift that life is. You know, you mentioned I have a radio voice. Well, I didn't develop that. God gave me that. And I want to remind myself that these abilities that I have, this motivation to contribute, they're all gifts. And I need to celebrate the gift and honor it and use it. And when I get a little bit off, and I occasionally do, it's to stop and take a deep breath and take a look at where I've come from and where I want to go, and that I am, as one of my friends, Arjun Sen, amazing marketing guy, he talks about all of us being one of one, our uniqueness. It ain't just our fingerprint that's unique. We are unique beings, and we are here for a purpose. I believe that down to the cellular structure. And I want to celebrate that and live it.
So the one thing about our lives is that when we're growing up, we have these seeds that are sprinkled in us. Take me back to the beginnings, where you were born and raised, and how these seeds sprouted and became who you are today.
I was born into a fairly well-to-do family in the hills of West Virginia. At about 2.5 years old, my father lost everything. He lost his business and descended into a vat of alcohol for the balance of his life. And we moved from there to Green Bay, Wisconsin. I've always been grateful. It sounds crazy to be grateful to a city, but the city took care of me. It was my refuge. There were people that somehow saw something good in me and were supportive of me. I think the next thing that happened was I ended up working in radio at age 14. By age 17, I had the highest rated radio show in the state of Wisconsin, a top 40 music show. I was named most likely to succeed by my graduating class. I took the next 10 years to make them wrong. I had a marriage, and it ended in divorce. I felt horribly guilty. I was drinking a lot. I was struggling with my little business, and I had 3 heart attacks. My life was a mess. And I went to one of the early Human Potential Movement seminars, and it's a cliche all these years later, but it saved my life and changed my life for the better. And from then, lots of success, some failures, but I want to get to the end of this game being able to say that it was a life well lived, and I've done the best I can to do that.
When people get to the doorstep or the brink of things that are really bad, like you've mentioned, health scares and other things, you come back and you're emboldened and you have these things that you just really hold on to. What was the philosophy, or what is something that you've really held on to since going through that you hold on to consistently and live your life in a different way because of?
I can quickly read you a list of bad qualities of my mother and father. And my mother particularly was an angry, violent woman who didn't seem to like children and had a lot of them. However, when I went through that training at age 27, the big thing that I learned was something that I already knew, which is when you take personal responsibility for your life, you get your power back. Life begins to clear up for you. And she actually modeled that with all of her kind of not so good qualities. She was widowed 3 times, and she kept food on the table. She kept some kind of clothing on our backs. And she was resilient. And she did that because I never heard her make a victim statement in all of the years we were together. And so personal responsibility is, if anything, my secret sauce. It's what I teach. It's what my book is about. Because as long as you are part of the victim culture, your life is not going to turn out very well. I just keep reminding myself whenever I slip into being the victim of our government or victim of the economy or all of those places you can now be a victim of. I remind myself that I am one of one, and that it's up to me. My reactions are everything. What happens is just what happens.
So we touched on the motivator for your day and what gets you through. Let's take you to the end of that day. How do you look back on a day and quantify that as a good day?
Joe, I work with some very high-powered people, executives in mid-sized companies primarily. And one of the things that I notice about them is they work hard. They're very clear. They are up to something positive. What they and I tend not to do is to stop and listen to ourselves. So what I do at the end of the day is to do that. I spend the end of my day saying silent prayers, sometimes out loud prayers, and of gratitude and of noticing, of an awareness of that day. But it's an opportunity to be quiet seems to be increasingly difficult in our busy, crazy, over-communicated society. And so that's what I do, and it's what I recommend to my executive clients. Find a way, a walk, a swim, a conversation with someone special, a prayer, a meditation. Can do it a lot of different ways, a bike ride, and spend time with yourself, being with you.
So what's been one of the best responses to your book or your services or from a client, from anybody over the years that you still remember?
Wow, what a lazy, that's going to make my day right there, just considering that. Something that I have noticed over the last few years, Joe, is that I'm a pretty extreme introvert. I've stayed in the background in building my businesses. I did not put my name on them like Tony Robbins or Stephen Covey or Dale Carnegie. It was always a corporate name, and I kind of hid in the background. And when I did the book, I had to come out of hiding, I guess, and which was a great growth experience for me. And in the last 5 or maybe even 10 years, those acknowledgments, I think they were always there for me, except people didn't know who I was. And the acknowledgments are kind of fast and furious. It's heartwarming, actually. I think having somebody say that they got their life back, I've got those kinds of messages, lots and lots of them, or corporations saying that you helped us in a major effort, you helped us survive. When we started working with Chase Bank, they were near bankruptcy, and then they combined with JP Morgan and became this hugely successful company. And they credited us with a lot of that, and which felt really, really good. But also, in the first heavy year of COVID, in November and December, I dedicated myself to being a driver for delivering food to struggling households and getting face-to-face thank yous for doing something that was so easy for me, and they were so grateful just, that I went to a food bank and picked up a box of food and brought it to their house. So I've had the big praise, and I've had those moments, and I've been willing to let them in and be acknowledged. And so that's been very special in my life recently.
So when you lean back at the end of the day and you think about your life and everything you've overcome and everything you've achieved, what are you the proudest of?
Well, it'll be a little odd sounding, perhaps. I'm most proud of creating an effective co-parenting relationship with my former wife. It was, some of my friends identified it as the divorce from hell. Some really bad things happened. And then I found out that the only thing that's going to really support a solid foundation for young children is not therapy, and it's not a trip to Disneyland. It's an effective co-parenting relationship with this woman who was being very angry and very destructive. And so what I'm most proud of is taking on that challenge and raising some great children.
I like that answer. That's very good. I understand that. I think it's very effective for everybody to get together and do things for the right reason. You know, everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, clients, colleagues, but ultimately you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm one of one, and that my struggle has been to accept that. In my book, Joe, when it first came out, I got a lot of praise, and friends, people that I really love and respect, bought a lot of copies. And then I started noticing that they would say, well, I really love your book, but I'm a little disappointed. Of course, I would say, well, what's disappointing about it? And they would say, because the book is not about you. And that's true. It's about our, our graduates and the interaction between participants and our material. And but one chapter is actually about me, and I just didn't tell people for many years. And that chapter is about the most limiting belief in the world, and that belief is I am not enough. And that's about me. That's about my journey, and learning that I am enough, and really accepting that, and saying that to you that I am enough. That's still a little edgy for me. It's still a little unfamiliar, but I get that God put me here for a unique purpose. My job is to realize it.
That's wonderful. So if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, Robert, and your life, and get your book and hire you, anything related to your world, where's the best place for them to go?
My website is best, therobertwhite.com. Therobertwhite.com. There's about 1 million Robert Whites, so the robertwhite.com went away a long time ago, but I'm the Robert White, and that's one way, or certainly on LinkedIn. My book is Living an Extraordinary Life. If you search Robert White Extraordinary, you're gonna find me, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, so people can connect. Joe, as you know, it's all about relationships. It's all about connecting. And whether we end up doing something together or not, I enjoy the connections. And that's what my life's about at this point.
I certainly do, too. And I think that was just magnified by what we've lived through COVID. Community is key. Robert, it's great to meet you. I really appreciate you, sharing your story of triumph and just feeling satisfied and it's been wonderful. I appreciate you opening up.
Joe, I love your questions. I love your way of being. I love the fun that you create, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.